organization. Governance is not, and I repeat, it is not measurement, it is not reporting, it's not audit management, it's not financial control, it's not policy enforcement, it's not vision drive, it's not strategy drive. Governance asks, are we doing X, Y, Z? But it does not ask, how are we doing it? So governance, oversight, it asks, are we doing X, Y, Z? It does not ask, how are we doing it? Sometimes we confuse ourselves as we sit in the board. You go to a board meeting, you hear your CEO telling you, oh, we are going to train people in Machakos, and the board member, the person in governance, want to know, how many are you training? Why are you training them? As long as it's within strategy, as long as it's done within the processes you are doing, as long as it follows the procedures, it's not about how, it's about what. So that is very important to know if you're sitting in the board. So perhaps one of the things, and I want this to be very interactive, is to tell me one word, and I think there's going to be, you can put it on your chat, one word which describes good NGO governance. Just one word. You can put it in the chat and we can see what you put. And you can do that quickly. I'll give you a minute. One word which describes good NGO governance. So I'm going to look at the charts now and see what you're writing. One word. I'm going to give you a minute. If nobody writes, I'll carry on. One word which defines good NGO governance. I think you're not very brave, so I'll give you time to warm up because nobody has written anything. So I hope you can still hear me. Teamwork, great. Thank you, Dr. Wero. Accountability, thank you, Meshach. Any others which are coming? Let's go ahead so that we can see what we have. Accountability again. So when we think about NGO governance, and my slides, okay, it's about, it refers to sharing decision-making authority. This requires transparency. It requires accountability. It requires following the regulations and the laws, whether it's an INGO board if you're in Kenya, whether it's a charity commission for those who are of us with UK. It requires responsiveness, equitable and inclusion. This time we are talking a lot, and I'm sure you are doing that. We are talking a lot about diversity and inclusion, and it requires consensus. So a good INGO governance is done through internal checks and balances and divides power and authority between management and governing body. So if you think about Kehpca, good governance for Kehpca is to make sure there are good checks and balances which are underpinned by transparency, accountability, following the rule of law, being responsive as a board, equitable and inclusive, consensus. So it's not the chair of the board setting these balances and checks, it's the whole board through consensus setting and agreeing what is good and dividing that authority and delivering that to the management so that we can serve the people who need palliative care. So those are the things which really determine good governance. So governance is the process, if we capture that, providing overall vision and direction, purpose, oversight for an organization. And for that to happen, we have what we call the board of directors. Here in the UK, we call them the board of trustees. There are other places where they are called board of management committees. Whatever you call them, it's that body which provides oversight to all your vision, direction, purpose, oversight. We call it direction of travel. That's a very language we use within our board, that this is a direction of travel for this year. These are the things we are aiming to do. The board, that governance provides oversight for those things. Management is the everyday, and you know this, I'm just telling, really preaching to the choir here, is the day-to-day implementation of the board's vision through the policies you set, through the procedures you set, and us doing the activities to accomplish the goals of the organization. So I sit in my board, but I don't sit as a board member. I sit as an ex officio in my board as a CEO, so that I can be the link between the governance and the day-to-day management. So I am the person who relays or who oversees what the board tells me, who reinforces that, who who make sure those processes and procedures are accomplished for the benefit of Girls Not Brides as an organization. So, and that division is very, very important because sometimes we get it wrong. Sometimes governance overstep onto the management. Sometimes the management oversteps onto the governance. You find people are just making decisions without involving their board, or you find the board is become this authoritarian body, which nothing happens within an organization before we check with them. So it's very important that we are very, very clear in this, and we'll look at that a little bit more. So perhaps maybe another question is for you to name functions of a well-serving board of directors. Again, if you want to use your chart, name one function of a well-serving board of directors. I'll look at the chart. What are some of those things? I've seen efficiency. I think this was before leading, efficiency, transparency. That was the governance. What about a well-functioning board of directors? What are some of those things we need to see? If you can say, think about your own board. If you are an organization and you have a board, what is one thing you really like about your board? Leadership. That's good. What's another thing you like about your board? Maybe you can also write what you don't like. But what do you like that can tell you that my board, I've seen somebody in Meru Hospice. What is your board in Meru Hospice doing so well that you're so proud of? Anybody else? Or shall I go ahead? I know this is not a very good interaction. If you want to speak up, actually, you can unmute and speak. Transparency, Lillian, thank you. So there are some really big things we can talk about. So I'll just go ahead, but keep writing. There are monitoring, commitment. Thank you, Dr. Weru. So there are so many things, but I'll try to go ahead. Oh, stuck now. Don't know why it's stuck. Okay, so the functions of a well-functioning board. The first one is legal compliance. Does your board understand if you are in Kenya, for example, if you are registered as an NGO, it's the NGO board. Does your board understand the legal compliance required by the NGO board? If you're in Uganda, I don't know what is the equivalent right now, I've forgotten, but does your board know what is the legal requirement so that they're in compliance with that? And many boards don't actually know. I have come here in the UK, I did not know the requirements of the Charity Commission, the UK Charity Commission. So I have had to go through a training for the Charity Commission training, and they are also training my board because this is so important that you know what you are signing to legally. So that is very important, and that's a good function of somebody serving in the board who understands the legal issues around compliance. A well-serving board sets direction of travel, to say that this year we are going to be working strategically, we are going to be working in 5 regions of Kenya, we are going to be doing this, really setting that direction of travel, and then the management to go and make sure they implement, setting policy, and sometimes they don't have to write these policies, but it's agreeing. For example, if you are all in the world I am, we are talking a lot about COVID-19. What is a protocol for COVID-19? So in our office, we have set up a COVID-19 protocol, how to ensure safety for staff. We have written that policy, but it's up to the board to ratify that policy, and it's up to us, myself as a CEO, to implement that policy so that we make sure our staff are safe, whether it's lockdown or working from home. All those guidance, we have put them into a policy so that it gives people direction, and setting boundaries. So we work from home, we have complete regulations how we do it, so we are within those confines. Now we are going to open up, and I'm giving you like real stuff. We are going to be opening up. Now we have another policy of our transition back to the office. If we transition, how many people, when do we go in, how many people go in, what is a flexi time? If we have flexi time, there is a policy around that, so that we are setting clear boundaries, because when there are no boundaries, there is a tendency for abuse. They also oversee the financial affairs of the organization. There are so many perhaps board members who don't even know what is the overall organizational budget, or how that budget is done, who manages that, what are the processes. So a board needs to know what is the financial affairs. Is the organization drowning in debt? Does the organization have money? Are we in risk of going down? Do we have money? Don't we have money? What is the long-term vision for that? thinking about, but also supporting the NGOs' long-term viability. We are NGOs which are so dependent on donor funding. So it's even thinking about reserves. If you can, some organization, can we set aside some money so that if today a donor says, we cannot fund you, we have a little bit money where we can maybe lay off staff or whatever. So reserves policy, long-term viability, so that you can still function maybe with a minimum staff. Promoting organizational stability as well. Sometimes there is, when you are dealing with people, there is conflict. It's making sure that the board becomes the place whereby you promote stability. And this conflict can be internal, can be external, because there are many threats, but it's up to the board to make sure that that organizational stability is sustained, and serving as a link to the organizational constituencies. Maybe it's the public, they are spokespeople. This is not just the role of the board, but if you're on a board of Kehpca or another organization, you are a link from Kehpca to another, to the outer world, to your circle of influence, because all of us have our own circles of influence. But I also talked about ensuring compliance with laws, regulations, code of conduct. For example, when I talk about the NGO code of conduct, like in our own organization, we have an ethical and a code of conduct which every board member have to sign. We have a compliance due diligence. We check, it's called a fit person policy, to check, are these people okay? Are they people who've been caught in compromising situations, maybe abusing children or whatever? We check on all those due diligence, and they have to sign, and we do that every year. But it's also supporting, selecting and supporting and assessing the CEO. The CEO needs to be managed as well. Sometimes boards are afraid of CEOs, but CEOs need to be managed. A CEO needs to set their key performance indicators. I have set mine with my board and have told them this year, these are the 10 things I'm going to accomplish. So every quarter, I've got my midterm assessment next month with my board to say, have I accomplished the things I set to do from January to June? And then we agree, yeah, they are going well. Some have not gone too well because of COVID. And then we reassess and reassign. So it's very, very important that the board keeps an eye, accountability for the CEO, because if you're not accountable to the CEO cannot also hold her own staff accountable. These are things sometimes we forget. We sit in a board and we think we are equals with our CEO, but we are not. Our job is to make sure we are supportive with our CEO, but our job is to make sure also our CEO performs. But it's not in an authoritarian manner. It's agreeing and co-creating KPIs or key performance indicators, and then assessing that and knowing what is your CEO delivering, so that if there is a problem, those are the things you go back to. If there is, you want to give them bonus, those are the things you go and say, this person has done really well, they desire a bonus, or this person is not doing well, maybe they need to be transitioned, or whatever decision you need to make, it needs to be underpinned and guided by policy. So those are critical functions of a board we need to have. This one is a bit busy. The other one is to make sure that as a board, let me just try and see what is the heading here. There are too many things here. The other thing is to think about who are you? How do you work? Sometimes if we are on a CEO, if we are too involved as a board, if you are not sitting under those guidelines, how do you determine what you do? Sometimes we as board members, and I'm trying to switch between myself as a board member because I sit on a board and as a CEO. So sometimes as a CEO, as a board member, is to be careful not to be too involved. You are too involved with everything. You are asking the whys rather than the what. Why are we doing that? What happened to this one? What happened to this one? When you find yourself asking those type of questions, you are undermining the authority of the CEO. You are becoming too much, and which is not necessary. You need to kind of back off and just trust the CEO that they are providing the strategic guidance you provided. As long as there is a reporting mechanism, and I'll give you an example. In my own board, I update my board every month. I write a quick email and I say, this is what we are doing this month. Things are good. And especially now with COVID, we have had a few of our staff who have COVID, especially our staff in India. We had a whole team who had COVID. So I was updating our board on that case every week how our staff are doing. Good news is that all of them are well. One of them was hospitalized, but they are all fine now, but they have lost family members. So it's saying, I would like to give the India staff compassionate leave. It's updating my board because there is an urgent information. But on a normal, when there is no COVID, I update my board every month. Every month, a quick email, this is what we are doing, things are good, nothing to worry about, and then I do a quarterly report. So as long as we are doing that, then the board should be confident that they don't need to be so panicked. We don't know what's going on. And when people don't know what's going on, they panic and they become over-involved. Then too little involvement is also not good, because then the board becomes a rubber stamp. You have no idea what's happening. You don't read any of your emails. You don't read any of your reports. You just sign, you just rubber stamp. That is very dangerous. It can put you at risk and it can put the organization at risk. But I think it's also making sure that the board is setting both direction and boundaries. So you require a bit of, and I'm not saying everyone, a few people in your board need to have technical competency. If we are doing palliative care, you need at least a few people, not everyone, not everyone needs to be a palliative care doctor or a palliative care nurse, but a few people need that technical competence because they are going to be helping set the direction of travel or the strategy direction for the organization. But it's also very important to bring new people, finance people, legal people, corporate people who can then bring you to an entire new world of other players or other partners or other high influence people. So don't fill your board with like-minded people, because then that way you are not going to get that cross-pollination of ideas. So the third one is to make sure we protect the relationship between the chairperson of the board and the CEO. And some of us as CEOs, we write protocols, we write systems, but protocols can have no impact, zero impact, no matter how good a policy is. If there is no trust, that policy is as useless as the paper is written on. So the most important thing before you write protocols and relationship is to build a very strong, trusting relationship with our board, and a relationship where you can share and openly. When I met my board chair, when I joined Girls Not Brides, I met my board chair, and one of the things we agreed is that we are going to be giving each other feedback, where they have overstepped and where I have overstepped, where I have not delivered, where they have not delivered, and that feedback, and given kindly. Of course, don't tell off your boss, and also don't tell off your CEO. You give it kindly, it builds trust. So you become a very trusting entity, because the chair of the board is actually the link between the CEO and the full board, and the CEO is the link between the board and the staff. So that relationship, if it's not good, is going to show up with the staff. You'll hear the CEO always saying the chair refused, the board refused, the board didn't say, the board didn't do, and that destroys relationships. Make sure also you do setting checks and balances. I talked about that, because this helps not only safeguard, it also helps with decision making. It also helps with fairness, whether it's staff handbook, whether it's staff recruitment procedures, transparency. Make sure you have all that. So the board must therefore be aware of and agree with internal procedures. For example, recruitment. How are you recruiting? Where do you recruit? Who kind of people do you recruit? For example, I sit in a global kind of space. So when I'm recruiting, I have to be telling my board, for this position, I want this position based in Kenya, or I want this position based out on India. And this is the rationale. They may not be involved in the day-to-day recruitment, but they know why that position is over there. How is it going to cost? They also need to know about your financial controls, because the board also have expenses. And I have told my board, if I'm going to have my expenses approved, they need their expenses approved. So what is the process of approving expenses of a board? What does our financial control say? So all these rules are to be followed and complied by everybody. Purchasing, agreeing on authority levels, at what level me as a CEO am allowed to approve so that the organization can function, and at what level does the CEO need to be included, the chair of the board or somebody else in the board, maybe the treasurer, to sign so that there is there is actually like a checks and balances as well. So these are very, very important. And as a board, if you don't have that, you need to put that in place. It safeguards not only the board, it safeguards the staff, it safeguards the organization. So these are absolutely a must. You must do that. So I'll keep going. So the other issue we need to always think about, which is something we never think about, is board development. And how normally it happens in many places is that somebody tells you, we think Faith will be very good, we want her to come on the board. Faith comes, joins your board. Faith has no idea what you do, has no idea what the organization is, sits in a board meeting, is making decisions for your organization. So you have to make sure, this is a position of power. You have to make sure this person understands your organization's ins and outs, because the decisions they make are determined by the information they have. And if they do not have enough information, if they don't know why some things are important to you, they can jeopardize your plan. So make sure that the board understand, not only the organization, they understand their role. Why are they there? Why did you choose them? What do you want them to come to join your board? And this includes doing formal training. In fact, just last week, we did our formal training with our board. That was fun. We are looking at safeguarding. Make sure all of you are hearing all these things about power shifting, diversity, inclusion, and all that, Black Lives Matter. All those things are making people very panicky. So we had a diversion and inclusion training for our board, so they understand, what does this look like within our organization? What are the policies we need to put in place? What are the places we are not doing well? What are the places we need to improve? Briefing, assessments. You need to assess your board performance. The way I have KPIs, the chair of the board need to set KPIs for the board. What are the things we are going to deliver this year for Kehpca as a board? So Dr. Wero, you sit with your board, you say this year we need 3 policies, we need 1 on diversity, we need safeguarding because of COVID, we need this, we need that, we need to hire a CEO, and I know you have done all that, and you set that as your KPI. Then every quarter, you also self-assess as a board, so you know, are we actually delivering for this organization? And when you are doing the chief executive assessment, you can also share to the chief executive to say, this is what we have achieved as a board, and that creates trust and transparency. But we must also, that's what I'm saying, you must also lead that annual assessment to keep making sure that the people you have are still fit for purpose. Some people sit in the board for years and years and years, and we assume because they've been here so long, they are fit for purpose. Perhaps not. Ask, keep assessing, and those assessments also help you in case you want to transition somebody, because sometimes it's very difficult when somebody has been with you 10 years to think, maybe we need to let this person go. So, but you can say, now we are seeing your engagement is becoming a little less, maybe we need to give you, maybe you can become our ambassador or something, and we bring new blood, because people want to stay around, but those assessments can really help you to determine how you transition your board. So this is a question really for your own self. Maybe this is a question to self rather than you telling me, is to really think, if you're a board member of Kehpca, of another organization, maybe to think of an area you need to learn more within your organization. You need to learn more so that you can be more effective. Maybe you don't know the financial controls of the organization you are leading. Or this question can be overturned. You think, actually, I think my board needs to know this. So I need to create a training program. So the next board meeting will have a 1-hour governance meeting and a 1-hour training session, because I really want my board to understand this. And that's what sometimes I do with my board. I think, for example, giving you an example of child marriage, there's a big issue around criminalization, setting legal policies, and some of our board don't even understand the value of doing that. So the last board meeting, we had our governance board where we signed our work plan, we signed our budget, we signed our policies, and the next hour, we got an expert to talk to us about criminalization of child marriage. And it was really good, because when I then come back and I say, this is what we need to do in strategy, the board already knows what we are talking about. We have a global movement. I told you it's a global partnership. And we are talking about how do we invest deeper within this movement? How do we invest money, give grants to some of these people we are calling our movement? We are not a grant-making organization, but with COVID, our people are really struggling. So how do we give them grants so that they can, organizations are closing down. So how do we help them so they don't close? So this is a policy I wanted to put through to our board, but I'm not the best person to come and tell them about it. So I invited an expert on social movement, and she came and talked to us about how to strengthen social movements. And now we are looking at a grant policy, which we can put in the board meeting on June. So these type of questions are really, really useful to bring that coherence and agreement within your board. So how do you then recruit your board? How do you recruit board members? The first thing is to remind yourself that you are only as good as the people who are around you. Look around your board. If your board is not strong, you are just as good as that board. If they are strong, energetic, influential, then your organization is as strong as the people you surround yourself with. So be very careful. And whether you are doing recruitment formal or informal, there are 4 steps. The first thing is to define your need. What do you need? Don't look at person and you think this person is good on my board. Think about, what do I need on my board? And I'll give you an example. This year, again, and I'm telling you, these are things I'm going through right now. When I joined my board, we decided that we are strengthening our work in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. And I thought, okay, if those are the areas of focus, we have hired staff in Mexico, we have staff in India, we have staff in Africa, in Nairobi. If we are hiring staff, shouldn't we then be looking for board members in those regions so that our staff also have support? So that was the need. I said, I need people from the regions we serve. So we have defined that need. But then to say, it's not just about having somebody from India or Africa or Guatemala or wherever. It's saying, but what skills do we currently have in the board? So we did a skills matrix. We looked at what are the skills, doing self-assessment. We gave these skills matrix to our board and said, tell us what skills you bring. And they told us all the skills they bring. Then we found the skills we don't have. And we identified those and said, these are the skills we need. This is what we are lacking. So we developed a job description. But within those job description, we also told the person why it's important for them to join us. What are the benefits of joining a global platform? We give you profile, you link with members, you become, you are in solidarity with all people, you have opportunity to meet greater numbers of stakeholders working on this issue, you have a bigger voice. So you can package your benefits the way you want to benefit them. And then we also define the responsibility and authority. We don't want somebody because they're in India to think now all the decisions about India will be made by that one person. It's to remind them you are part of a collective. You are just representing that and being the voice of India, but when we come to the board, you are part of a collective. You are not here to be the spokesperson for India. You are here to be a knowledge broker for the region. So because the decisions are made collectively with the board. So it's very important to really clarify that before people even join, so that if they're not sure about that, then those are not your people. Define authority. What's the level of the authority? The highest authority in the board is the chair. So the fact that you are representing a region or another, you are accountable to the chair of the board. So that needs to be very, very clear. The chair can ask you, delegate authority to you, but you are at the authority of the chair. So clarify that. Clarify the term. How long do you want the person to serve? Some organizations are very open-ended. Then you are left with people with 20 years, 15 years, they are still on your board. It's good to have new blood. So we say the terms are 2 terms for 3 years. So you know you can serve with us for 6 years, and then you drop away and you can come back for a 3rd term. Very similar to what we had developed with APCA. I'm sure, Dr. Ann, you remember some of these things we developed in APCA to look at the terms and then the general duties. And then we give people a time commitment. How long do we expect you to serve, to be there? We say that our board, we have 3 board meetings a month, so you are able to actually be part of that board. And we say if there is travel, of course, this year there hasn't been travel because of COVID. So we say when COVID releases, there will be travel. It's UK travel or wherever. Sometimes we meet in the country, in Kenya, in India. So we are very, very clear, and we talk about the qualifications. What qualifications are we looking for? What skills and what qualities and characteristics? This is something people forget. There is nothing as bad, and I'll tell you some of the annoying characteristics of a board member a little later. It's very important to say, what qualities and characteristics are you looking for? Trust, somebody who is collaborative, not somebody who is individualistic, who wants, it's about them. It's about the issue. It's not about self-promotion. It's really somebody who can work with others. Once you have identified that and really clarified, go to step 2, advertise and find your candidates. And it doesn't have to be a formal advert. You can even pass around on your networks and say, this is the type of board member we are looking at. Screen people, interview. If this person is going to be your board, I always get very surprised that people, and I'm learning that this is people, I've been interviewed for the position I have. I think I had 5 layers of interview, and I'm not the supreme authority of my organization. Then somebody just walks in, becomes my boss, and becomes the authority. You don't even know where they come from. It's so important to do that assessment to really check, do these people really fit into my organization? We do not do that very well, but there is so much value in screening or even talking to people. It doesn't have to be a formal interview. Talking to people, finding out what they care about, what they think about, why is it important for them? Why do they want to be your board? And then really talk about that, and then orient them, train them. I cannot re-emphasize that enough. And then once you get that, you need to also have a succession policy within your board. You need to have a succession plan. Not everybody steps away at the same time. You have a transition, a layered transition, so that some people are left. And this helps you to really make sure that you are replacing board. You have term limits, you have retirement, you have non-performance issues. You are replacing your board. If you need to recruit a chair, all these, a CEO, all this succession planning need to be found in a board handbook. Many of us have staff handbook, which has regulations of the staff, but we do not have a board handbook, which says, how do we manage our board? It's very, very important to have that, because that is what is your manual, which guides. So when there's problems, it's very easy to refer to that. Even when the life is good, it's also good to refer to that as well. So the values of succession planning is that it helps you to keep your talent and to attract top talent. It prevents groupthink, because if people keep moving and getting new people, then you kind of are diluting that. Groupthink is diluted. It ensures diverse composition. It maintains balance and institutional knowledge if people are not falling out at the same time. It enhances trust with stakeholders to see there is rotation. That organization does not belong to faith. I've had that terms like Mongo, my own NGO. So it does not belong to faith. There is a caveat. There's a conveyor belt of new people, new influencers coming to sit there, and it maintains the balance of power. And most importantly, it makes sure that the leadership is not unaffected by the change. If one board member steps down, there's a plan. So people are not panicking and scrambling through thinking, what do we do? There's a plan of how we feel. Even having a bank of possible board members is great. Then you can just call them in and they can join and they be part of your board. But what are some of the annoying personalities? If you're sitting in the board, maybe you might identify on this, but I know here we have very good people here. They are what we call the ideas person. They come to the board meeting, they have 20 ideas and they want you to implement all of them. They are bombarding the CEOs with what they need to do. This is what we need to do. They have no evidence, no backing, but they also don't even want to contribute. They just want to share their ideas. So it's very important that if we are having ideas, to make sure they are homed in strategy. It's not just a random catalog of ideas or a canvas of ideas, which perhaps don't help. There's a rambler, somebody who just keeps talking and talking and talking, and they won't even allow anybody to talk like I'm doing now. So I'm very conscious of time, just talking and talking, and they do not even give the chair a chance. So we need to really watch for that. There is resistor. Nothing is good. Nothing is good. I don't like anything. They resist everything. You come as a CEO or whoever is there, you leave the board thinking, I don't even know what they expect us to do. They've refused all my work plan. Resistor. And then the Debbie Downer, who is always negative. There is nothing exciting. We are going to have food. Why didn't we have food outside? Why didn't we have inside? Why are they bringing sandwiches? Why don't we give samosas? There is nothing which makes them happy. And then there is the jargonist. You know, we are in palliative care, and we bring people who are not in palliative care, and we are all talking about psychosocial, morphine, symptoms. People are thinking, I don't know what they are talking about, but I don't want to look like a fool, so I'm quiet. So let's avoid that as well. Let's use language which is all inclusive. There is also the printer who wants everything printed and bound, and where are my printer? Where is everything? And you think, oh gosh, he's come again. Again, there's a grudge holder who leaves thinking the chair today did not give me a chance to say anything. I had so many things to do and he never gives me a chance. He always asks so and so. And there is the completely oblivious. Never makes meetings on time, doesn't even remember when the meetings are, doesn't even remember what they committed to do. They turn up, they don't even have their papers, they don't even know what their agenda is, they don't even know what's going on, but they are there anyway, they are warming the seat, they are happy, but they are really completely oblivious what is a conversation. So if there are people like this, there are ways to manage them. Of course, it's really people management, so that you are really calling out this bad behavior, call it out. But if people are disruptive, that's when you go back to your succession planning, to your handbook, and transition them out. As a chair or as a board, you need to really have people who are with you, walking with you, talking with you, so that you become really a coherent whole which manages the organization. So sorry, I have given you so much information and have taken so much time. So I'm sure there are so many questions. I'm sure there are things I have not covered. So this is your time to talk back, to ask me questions, but I don't have all the answers. So we can all discuss and share, but this is your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Faith, for taking us through that important discussion. Actually 101 of governance, which to me is required by virtually everybody. Think of institutions, think of anywhere we did, including our homes. By the way, as you are talking, I think this fits in every activity that we undertake. So now I would wish to welcome questions to Faith or points raised. You can either raise your hand or put your question on the chat box. Please, let's talk Faith. So Esther, you said there was a poll to see how many are board members?
Yeah, please, we can have that now.
Okay, you can have the poll now.
But you can ask questions as you vote, so that we are moving forward. Please, you can be unmuted if you prefer to speak as opposed to writing. Feel free. If you have a question, but not just a question, if there is something you think this is important for people to hear, there is so much wisdom here. So please share your wisdom as well. Don't just let me be the author of all knowledge.
Okay, as we continue with the poll, Faith, I can set the ball rolling. What is your take on the way we take things, the impact of the way we are cultured to governance ethics within the institutions that we work with? Because there are ways we are used to doing things there is our comfort zone, and this might have an impact on the way we deal with issues within our institutions.
I think I agree completely that, for example, there are people who are conflict averse, people who don't want to engage with conflict, people who are very uncomfortable transitioning others. And that is why a policy is very, very important, to have standards, agreed standards, which really guide you as an organization. Then it's very easy to say, on this occasion, we have said that, for example, we have said in our board, you have to attend at least 3 meetings every year. This year you have attended only 1. And if you only attend 1, this is what our policy says. So it's not about you anymore, it's about what the policy says. So where we go wrong is that sometimes we don't have boundaries or standards which guide that function. So it becomes a judgment issue, and then it becomes a personal issue. But when you say, this is our policy, this is our system, this is how we do things, and when people come, it's very easy to teach people when they come. It's very hard if I'm sitting in a board for 2 years and then all of a sudden you come and tell me, by the way, Faith, did you know that you are supposed to sit in a board 3 meetings? I'm thinking, I don't know. Nobody has ever told me. So that orientation is very important, but to also keep reviewing those policies so that they're updated. Here in the Charity Commission, and I'm sure Dr. Ann, you know this because I know you have connections here with the Hospice UK, is that they update these things every year. So we are requested to update our things every year to just check. They don't change too much, but to just check. And that is what helps you to make those tough decisions, which you don't want them to look like it's you, Dr. Wero, who is so mean, or it talks to your comfort zone. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
The next is coming from an anonymous attendee who has excellent presentation. As a CEO, how do you politely point out the resistor within the board?
As a CEO, how do you raise politely the resistance you see from the board?
Yeah.
I think as a CEO, your biggest ally is your chair of the board. And that's why I say that trust between a CEO and the chair of the board is so important, that you should feel that you can tell the chair of the board that I'm having problems with the board. And this is where the problem sits. It becomes a challenge when the relationship is not strong. When the relationship with the CEO and the chair is not strong, then you don't have somewhere to go to. And then that promotes back channels. You find somebody talking to different board members, they are also afraid. So it's really making sure that we check that relationship. And to me, the chair of the board is very, very important. I told you my own chair stepped down, and now we are going through a recruitment process. And it's very rigorous to really look, because we are asking all those questions, because it's a very, very important person within the board. A chair can make or break an organization if you don't have the right chair, because that's the confidence of the CEO.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Faith, for that answer. Now we go to one of our board members. By the way, we are joined by 2 more board members from Kehpca. One of them is Dr. Meshach Didu, who says the presentation was wonderful, but asks, how do you handle issues of conflict of interest?
Yeah, a great question, Meshach. Thank you. How we handle it is that within our board, we always have a standing agenda item of conflict of interest. That's the first thing. Before we start the meeting, everybody in the board has to declare a conflict of interest, to say, I've looked at this agenda, and today in this agenda, we are going to be discussing, for example, we are going to be discussing a grant with so-and-so, and I sit in the board of that organization. So I'm going to excuse myself while you discuss that issue. So it's very, very important that that becomes a standing agenda item, and it's minuted. So, and how it's minuted is that every day the chair goes through the agenda and says, today we have 5 agenda items, this one, this one, this one, this one. Does anybody have a conflict of interest? Then you declare that conflict, and then you can decide collectively, is that conflict big enough to make sure that that person is excused from the room while you are making that discussion. I'll give you an example. We had a conflict of interest with our board when we were recruiting our board members. One of the board members was a colleague working with her, and she knew her very well. They had worked together. She didn't even know she had applied. And she came and said, we are going to be talking to this new board member. She declared a conflict. She was excused from the meeting. She left Zoom. We were on Zoom, left Zoom. We discussed with that candidate. And when we finished, we called her back. And we did not actually share what we discussed. It was all minuted. She was to read that in a minute. So she's not part of that discussion at all. It takes discipline and for people to be honest, because you won't know where is the conflict. So it's for people to be honest and say, I have a conflict on that issue and I'll excuse myself.
Okay, thank you, Faith, for that. Now we close borders and go to Uganda, where we are going to answer the question by Dr. Eve Namisango, and then we go to Dr. Anne Merriman, who will ask a question. Dr. Eve asks, is it in order for a board member to prompt the CEO to share some updates if you do not hear from them for, say, 6 months? Is it in order to?
I think it's very, I think if you don't hear as a CEO, first of all, I would say, if as a CEO, if you do not hear from your board member for 6 months, there's a problem. So you shouldn't wait for 6 months. If you normally hear from your board members regularly and you don't hear for 2 months, 3 months, it's good to just drop an email and say, hey, Dr. Wero, I haven't heard from you. Are you okay? So, but also if they come out of the blue and they want an update, if it's not something which they need urgently for a reason, you can say, actually, we shared our update last quarter like we do. I'm on schedule to share my update next quarter like I normally do. Is there something urgent I can help you with? Because you also don't want to have these random requests for information because you are managing an organization. So you cannot service everybody. If this is within reason, maybe they are negotiating a grant or they are helping you, which you should know. But out of the blue, you haven't had somebody for 6 months. We need to establish where they have been for 6 months. So there is an accountability there process, but it's asking nicely to say, we haven't had you for 6 months. We actually sent this update 3 months ago. I can reshare with you. Is there anything else you need? But trying to stick to the agreed update times you already do. If you do monthly, keep monthly. If you do quarterly, keep quarterly. Not unless there is an emergency. I mean, Dr. Anne will be invited by the Ministry of Health and she will say, can you let me the latest information we have on this? Then that is reasonable. It's okay. When it's unreasonable, then you have to say, no, I cannot do that right now.
Okay, thank you, Faith, for clarifying on that question. I think Dr. Anne Merriman had raised her hand. Maybe you can unmute Dr. Anne and speak to Faith or one-on-one directly.
I think she's muted now.
Okay.
Can you hear me now? No.
Yes, we can hear you.
No. Can you hear me now?
Yes, Anne, we can hear you. How are you?
Okay. I'm fine, thanks. It's good to see you again. You're looking younger than ever and you're smarter than ever. I must say,
God has been kind to me.
yeah.
Thank you, Anne.
That was a wonderful talk, but I just want to get that written down somewhere. So I asked just in a question there if it was possible for you to give us a written summary of it so we can take it to our boards, because there's a lot missing in our board when I hear what you say. And a lot of it has been discussed over the years and it's been dropped for different reasons. And we have new members coming in that need to know all that as well. Now, I want to pass over to Rose, who's here with me, because she has a question for you too, but we'll call her when you're ready. Okay.
Thank you, Faith, for that presentation, and thank you, Kehpca, for organizing this webinar. It's really interesting, and it's been really nice to listen to you, Faith. You're a great speaker as usual. Yeah, we are a team here, and my question is, or I just need guidance. You talked of board assessment, which is very, very important. And my question is, who does the board assessment? Because at times you encourage your chair of the board to do the assessment. Maybe you send out the forms and nothing is done, or they bring it back to the executive director, what should be done in that situation? Thank you.
It's really good to hear from Uganda, my home, my family. Thank you so much, Rose. Thank you so much, Dr. Anne. And Anne, I think this presentation is being recorded, and I'm also very, very happy to share the slides which I have. So Kehpca should be able to give you the recording if people want to hear it and all that. So you have all my blessings for that. And if you want me to talk to your board at a different time, I'm also happy to do that. We can talk about that. So I'm in your hands, in your service, and if you need me to help in any way. Rose, you raised a very important question about assessments. Assessments are done by the chair of the board, but you as a CEO, you are a partner and a helper for the chair of the board. So you prepare the assessment notes, you prepare the email, you send it to the chair, and you say, Chair, this information needs to go to the board. It's our annual assessment, and we are going to present this at the board meeting. So the assessment goes, you let people go. It's the chair's responsibility to remind the board members to do the assessment. It's not the CEO, it's the chair to remind the board members to do the assessment. And to say that, to really be very, very clear when those assessments are going to be reviewed. So you can say, okay, we are going to have a board meeting in June. So we are going to do our assessment between March and May. And then when you go to the board meeting, you can then have a tally to say, we sent 10 assessments, we received 2. Mr. Chairman, you need to follow up with the 8 people, 8 people who did not do it, or the 2 people who did not do it. So that becomes an accountability process. But if it becomes, and that's why I was saying a board handbook, if people refuse to do it, so they are not in compliance. So you can have a policy to say if the board members don't do assessments every year, then they are not fit to be in our board. Don't be held hostage by board members. Have a very good system of these policies, because somebody is sitting there, they are not in compliance, but they're expecting you to comply. This is your boss. They're expecting you to comply, but they are not complying with the thing. So be very, very clear, but bring it back to the board so that it's a collective accountability. So when they hear we received from Dr. Wero, we received from Dr. Zippy, we received from Rose, we received from this, it makes people think, oh, next time I'll do it. And then you also tell people, the chair writes and say, so far, we have our assessment meeting in June, we have received 5 reports. So it's really CEO working with the board, but making sure also there's a consequence. Otherwise, you keep following up. It's when there's no consequence, people think, this is not important. I can skip it. They won't do it. It's not important. So, it's the same. If you don't do your performance appraisal, they will be the one sending you out. So you need to be very careful that you're also holding your board to account. But it's the chair in partnership with the CEO.
Okay, thank you, Faith. The partnership is key. The collaboration should be implemented because it guides. There are 2 questions that are similar, one from Gladys Moshe and the other one from Claudio Owino. How many members should you have in a board? What is the ideal number?
I think every country, every NGO regulations has a maximum number. I think in Kenya is 9, I'm not sure. Here in the UK, you can have a minimum of 6 and a maximum of 13. So we have a membership of 10. So I think it's really working within the guidelines you have been provided within the NGO or the legal framework you work with. I think, I don't know whether the Kenya one has changed. I think it was 9 minimum or something like that. It could have changed, I don't know. So check. That's actually a question really articulated and also in your articles of your association and all that, how you do that. So I think that is something you can check in the legal framework.
Okay. Anonymous at D is also asking 2 questions that I wish to read together. Can you fire the whole board and then reconstitute a new one? And follows that with, as a CEO, who is obviously at the board of directors, how do you handle issues with divided board members on issues that you want to implement? In the running of the organization, where members sit on the board with vested interests, we have seen situations where CEOs keep on being fired with each time there's a change in memberships of the board?
That's a very interesting question. If you are going to be firing a whole board, then there is a big problem. It's not just a problem with the board, there is a fundamental organizational problem. So I think for me, when you reach that place where you need to fire a whole board, the first thing is not to fire them. The first thing is to look for mediation. Again, when I worked in Uganda and also in Kenya, I know the NGO board have this mediation and training and to really look at how they can mediate some of these challenges with the board. And I think it's really looking at, is the problem so far gone? Because when you fire the whole board, you are not in compliance. You are putting your organization in jeopardy. So it's to make sure that you have a system or you have an interim committee, and what some agencies will help if the problem is so big that there is really no way to resolve this problem. They do what they call an interim management committee. They can appoint people who can really help you to manage that transition. So that is one way to really think about getting mediation, but also working with some of the legal entities. If you can't do with the INGO board, and I'm using the INGO board in Kenya because I knew they do some of these things, you can also use the legal fraternity, the lawyers. You can get a lawyer to work with you to help you so that you are in compliance, because if you don't have a board, you are not in compliance. So that is something to really be aware of. And then work with the lawyers to look what they call a caretaking board. It's a caretaking board which can be appointed by a legal entity to help the organization navigate what is a very, 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 very challenging environment. But it's not impossible, Claudia. It's not impossible to fire a board. It's actually sometimes better to go through the pain than to live with the pain. So if it's that bad, and it's really problem, get a legal advice, get a caretaker board, deal with your board, and then they will help you recruit, but make sure that the INGO board or the charity commission, wherever you are, that legal entity know what the problem is. It's now called a big incident report. You need to file a big incident report or whatever it's called. Then you file that, and then you say what the problem are, then they will give you guidance. They are very good. I know here in the UK, they are very good if these problems arise, but it's really making sure that you are in compliance. The other question, so have I answered that, Claudia? You can nod or you can thumbs up. There was another one, John, you asked. What was it related to that? Oh, board firing the CEO.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so I think, again, this is where now we need to be very, very careful. And that's why I said systems are very, very important. We have to have a clear staff handbook. Like my board right now, there is a process of, if I needed to be fired, there is a process. A board chair can't come and I'm fired. They have to have checked my KPIs. Am I performing? What are the grounds? Not unless it's gross misconduct. If it's gross misconduct, I'll go tomorrow. But if there is, if somebody doesn't like me, there is a process, and that process is documented in the staff handbook. Recruitment, termination, grievance procedure, it's all documented. So there is no way. And that is why I say checks and balances. So nobody has that supreme authority to come to an organization and just get rid of you. They need to follow the procedure. So these are things we don't take seriously, but these checks and balances really protect, safeguard the staff, safeguard the board, safeguard the CEO. So it's very, very important we have a very clear staff handbook of how processes are handled, how performance is managed, how gross misconduct, recruitment, termination, all those things are done. In fact, some organizations even have a very specific paragraph or chapter about recruitment, retention, and management of a CEO, because it's very important. Some organizations have that. How do you recruit your CEO? How do you manage them? How do you measure performance? Some organizations have very, very clear. I think we have that because that's an important leadership role within an organization. So then you are not just being tossed out like a piece of something, because somebody doesn't like you. Then there is another one where boards take sides. Again, it's really the conflict of interest. That is where that is managed. If boards are, if also the recruitment, because some board members bring their friends. So it's really the recruitment, which addresses that problem, that board members are not thinking, oh, so-and-so resigned, let me call my friend, we sit here together so that we get allowance or whatever. You know, it's making sure there is a clear process of recruiting, retaining, transitioning board members. So nobody can just go out and invite Jack, Jill from the street, come and be our board member. There's a process of hiring our board, and everybody knows that process. That helps you to address those camps and people sitting in different groups and camps, because it can be very, very debilitating. And I have worked with some challenging boards. It can be very, very hard. So it's really, and it's hard for the CEO, it's hard for the staff, it's hard for the organization. So it's really important that we take care of that, and sometimes we don't.
Okay. Thank you, Faith, for telling us that processes and procedures are key to having quality service provision. There's an interesting question here. I think it is based on the context of maybe the pandemic that we've had, that someone have been receiving questions about interim updates regularly. And they ask if there is such a situation as fragile organization situation, because they are asked about updates because of that single given reason.
I think, again, right now within the framework of the pandemic, we can say our staff are in a fragile and kind of stressful situation. So our staff are really fragile. So it's up to you as a CEO to know, to tell the board. I said I do a monthly update within myself, is to say, and I do staff well-being. Staff are well. We have a few who are not well. Just an update, but it's to tell the board, this is for information. I don't want you to do anything. This is just for your information. It's being very, very clear to say, I'm telling you, this is the issues we are dealing with, but not to do anything. I don't want you running or calling me. We are fine. I'm just telling you so you know. So I think being very, very clear, that when the board starts thinking the organization is fragile and we are struggling, it's when people don't feel like they have enough information. Funding is a big issue which makes board members panic. They think, oh, our organization is going down. And it's true, that can make an organization feel vulnerable, feel fragile. But if you are confident as a CEO, is to say, okay, our grants didn't come, but we have a plan. A plan we have, and it could be a drastic plan. The plan I have is that I'm going to bring a redundancy plan to you because we need to transition our staff. We cannot afford to pay them. The critical piece about all this, whether you're in a fragile state or you are struggling or you are vulnerable, is confidence. You have to be confident with how you are going to address that problem. Is to say, I'll be giving you bi-monthly, set the agenda. Don't let anybody set the agenda for you. Tell them, I know we are in a vulnerable situation because of our funding situation. This is how you are dealing with it, and I'll give you a bi-monthly update. So if somebody asks you for an interim update, you say, I sent you we agreed I'll be sending you a bi-monthly update. Things have not changed. Have that language in your back pocket. Things have not changed, but I'll be sending you a bi-monthly update. If they change, you'll be the first one to know. And then people think, oh, they're in charge. Things are going on. It's conveying that confidence is so important, because I know there are so many problems we face as NGO leaders. Sometimes you have to transition staff because you don't have salaries. It's a problem, but it can be solved. There is no problem we can't solve. We will solve it, but it's not easy, but we will solve it. So it's portraying that confidence, and don't need to keep checking. We are fine because I told you that I have a plan. I have a 6-month plan, and I'll update you if these things change. I'll come to you if these things change. Don't be having this interim of information because you also start panicking. What do they know? I don't. So I think it's very good to maintain that balance.
Okay, thank you, Faith, for that. You told us that you need a multidisciplinary board who come from different fields that can actually enrich the resources, or actually the skills that the board within the organizations have. Based on the fact that most NGOs have got boards which serve pro bono on a pro bono basis, How do you motivate members to join and also to continue serving from their different fields and their different professions?
You advertise. There are so many people who want, I would give you an example. When we started looking for our board members, I just thought, let's just advertise. It's a voluntary position. We are not going to pay you, but we are serving a great cause. We are trying to end child marriage. Anybody who hears that, who has a heart, will think that's a good cause to be part of. Palliative care, end of life care, managing vulnerable people, pain management. It's something which really draws onto people's heartstrings. Advertise and say, we have a great cause. We are trying to solve the problems of our people. Palliative care is like this. This is how it happens. And pull on the heartstrings and say, we are looking for a volunteer board member to come and energize our existing board. We are looking for somebody with this experience. We are looking for somebody who is able to give time. I wish I can share with you our board recruitment pack. It's so attractive. You think you're being hired for a job. It's a good pack. It's so much information. These are the people you are going to be joining when you join the board. These are the people you'll be playing with, high profile. These are, so it's attractive. It's not a paid position. And we say, if you have an extra hour on 2, we are not going to do a huge demand on your time. Please join us. This is a good cause. You'll be helping humanity. You'll be part of the solution to the future. Pull on the heartstrings. You'll be surprised. When we advertise for our board, we had 300 applications for our board position, not paid. 300 people. It was so hard to recruit. 300. So sometimes we are afraid to go out there. Just advertise. Put it online. Say, this is what we are looking. These are the competencies we are looking in our board. And there are so many people who want to be connected with a meaningful cause. There are so many people who want to feel like, especially now when we are all locked down in our own homes, people want to connect and be part of something bigger than themselves. This is the time. If you want to look for a board member, this is the time to get. People are changing their lives. People are, even a volunteer, if you want a volunteer to come and work with you, this is the time, because people are assessing their lives. This pandemic has changed the way we do business. And I have realized I can do this from my sitting room in London, so I can sit, so I can sit in any board now because I don't need to travel to be in a board. So I think it's really being brave and courageous, and also believing in what you do, being so passionate about what you do, that this is the best thing somebody can do in the world. If you do one thing, help us develop palliative care. Convey that passion in your board recruitment pack, and you'll be so surprised. One person, we have a new board member who joined us in May. They reached out to me. They said, Faith, I was reading about your work. I'm interested in joining a board. Do you have time? I have time. Are you interested? I interviewed him. He's joined our board. Very good person. So there are people there looking for meaningful things to participate, to engage with, to connect, because we are so disconnected as a humanity right now. And anything which can bring us together, it's so powerful.
Okay. Thank you, Faith. And I know we can continue this conversation for a long time with that resource that you have, the strength you have, and the passion you have on growing the kind of support that humanity at large requires, especially those who require an extra mile for everybody else to travel, for them to realize their human rights, and also for their care. It is now 21 minutes past 8 in the evening in Kenya. It has been a pleasure to have you, Faith. Thank you so much. I want to call upon Zippy to ask a question that their hand is raised. Zippy, go ahead.
Dr. Laura, I wasn't asking a question. I was also going to thank you for accepting to take this session. I know you do clinical medicine and you get tired, but when I reached out to you, you said you can do it, and I'm so happy you did it, because you are my chair also, and you probably understand a lot of what Faith has said since you have been leading Kehpca as the chair for the past 3 years. And I just wanted to say thank you. Before you close, just say thank you very much, Faith, for agreeing when I reached out to you. Not only you're a friend, although you're my boss at one time, you're more of a friend than a boss.
You're friends.
Yeah, we're friends, and I've seen many friends here from Uganda as well and from Kenya. But I just want to also let people know that in 2 weeks' time, we'll be having a session on ethos of palliative care for us to be reminded about why we are here and why faith keeps on coming back to us, because this is a very special field, isn't it, Faith?
It is.
And so,
Absolutely.
our next speaker in the next 2 weeks will be somebody we all admire and have heard of also, Dr. Anne Merriman. So keep tuning in, people. Don't give up on these CMEs. They're very important. Apart from clinical things, we talked about governance today. We'll talk about different things, and I'm sure it will be very engaging. Thank you, Dr. Weru. You can continue. Sorry, I just thought you might close before I say something. Thank you to both of you. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Zippy, for those remarks. I wanted just to call upon a member of my board to give thanks to everybody who attended. Meshek, are you able to give the final words? Meshek?
Yes, Chair. Dr. Weru.
Yes.
Am I audible?
You are audible. Please close the meeting for us with a few words.
Yes, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I know this is one of the topics that we have had issues with in different areas of our operation. Specifically for our Kehpca board, we are very grateful that we have actually underwent several trainings, but you know, learning is always a continuous process. And Dr. Faith Mwangi Powell has actually enriched it. And this is one of the formal, can we say formal or informal? It's formal training also for our board. I've benefited quite a lot. I also sit on other boards, and the information, the skills, the knowledge that we have actually imparted into it always reverberates whenever we go practically on the ground to work with in our different areas. So I would just want to say thank you so much, Dr. Faith Mwangi. Thank you so much for the organizers, Kehpca. Thank you so much, our chairman, Dr. John Weru, for being a good moderator. And lastly, our participants who joined in. I'm sure we have just gained quite a lot, and we shall forever be grateful. Whenever such a session comes up, we shall also take it up again. We look forward for more sessions. As we work from home, work from duty, we shall continue gaining. Thank you so much. Here in Homa Bay, our greetings. Homa Bay is on the lake side in Kenya. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening and stay safe. Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Thank you so much.
You connect, CP. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye.